That partly explains the controversy over a fast-growing newspaper that splashes them all over the front page. Here's ABC's Ryan Owens.
Mr. Green?
The Scarlet Letter is set in colonial America.
The Scarlet Letter A.
Fast forward a few hundred years, and shame is back. Humiliation hot off the presses. Those faces flying by on the printing press are mugshots. The only content of what may be this country's fastest-growing newspaper, the Slammer.
The Slammer man's here.
Each week, more than 100,000 copies are delivered to convenience stores in 11 major cities.
We'll see you next week.
All right. I would say it sells like hotcakes.
Readers sometimes line up to pay $1 for a first look at who was arrested the previous week. The Slammer publishes every suspect's mug, no matter how minor the crime. The editors group the pictures together. The wrinkly rascals, the tatted up and locked down, those who laugh it up, and
the Slammer Salon seems to be a reader favorite every time. Hair do's and don'ts. People, I think, maybe empathize and sympathize with bad hair days.
Isaac Cornetti publishes the Slammer from here in Raleigh, North Carolina. He came up with the idea 4 years ago and used his parents' minivan to deliver the first editions.
Did you have any sort of journalistic background, any newspaper background?
If you count delivering newspapers or reading the newspaper.
This one-time paperboy now sits atop a growing media empire that critics claim does little more than exploit people at their worst possible moment.
Do you ever feel at least a little bad about what you're doing?
I probably don't feel as bad as they do when they wake up and sober up the next morning.
Not surprisingly, the Slammer's toughest critics are those whose faces grace the pages. 19-year-old Brian Peterkin says the Slammer jinxed him. He picked up a copy 1 week. The next week, he was in it.
I read it one time, saw people that I knew in there, and it's like, oh man, it's crazy. Next thing you know, I'm the next person.
And now he's in the clink for at least 6 months. He pleaded guilty. Raleigh defense attorney Carl Knutson calls the paper trashy and voyeuristic and says it tramples on the rights of people who haven't been convicted of a thing.
There's not a magazine that says, freedom, these people were found not guilty. So the problem is that you get exposure from just an accusation, and yet it may just be that.
The Slammer may cause heartburn for civil libertarians, but there's little they can do. Mugshots are considered public records in most jurisdictions.
Of all of the mugshots you have seen, what is your favorite?
I think Nick Nolte's is still holding out as my favorite.
I could have said that one.
Their best-selling issue featured hometown Senator John Edwards' trademark grin on the front page.
I think politicians have definitely figured out how to take a great mugshot.
Texas Congressman Tom DeLay is proof of that. Senator Larry Craig of Wide Stance fame held up pretty well, too. Ohio Congressman Jim Traficant, not so much. Being in the Slammer does bring a measure of fame. In fact, the folks at the county jail have noticed new inmates are asking for more than a call to their attorney.
They'll ask if it's going to be in the Slammer newspaper. They'll ask us to try to prevent that from occurring.
The Slammer occasionally shows pictures of missing persons and fugitives. Readers help bring home this Arkansas girl and to put this accused killer behind bars in Ohio. So perhaps it's not a surprise law enforcement tends to like the paper, but we were shocked to find out who else supports it, at least with his money.
I do need, in the interest of public disclosure, to tell you that I have from time to time had an ad in the Slammer.
You heard it. That defense attorney who was just slamming the Slammer, that's his ad on page 2, proudly proclaiming, if you're in the Slammer, you need him.
Your critics say that you are not so much in the journalism business, not so much even in the humor business, but in the humiliation business. What do you say?
I would disagree categorically. People aren't going into the Slammer for singing too loudly in church. You know, these people's actions have consequences. Stop using drugs, slow down, stop drinking and driving, stop writing bad checks. It's really not that difficult to stay out of jail.
This publisher is betting plenty of people don't follow his advice and end up not just in jail, but in the slammer. I'm Ryan Owens for Nightline in Raleigh, North Carolina.